Hi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute honour to be here.
Well, thank you so much for joining. So, straight in, how did you start Osborn Interiors?
Um, well, I actually started by being a completely impoverished single mum. And I had two young daughters, aged 6 and 8. And I found myself in a really difficult position, despite having a very privileged upbringing. I found myself newly divorced and completely and utterly penniless. I had been a secretary before I'd had my children, and I'd given up work to be with them. And so then I found myself in this position with no money, two little mouths to feed, and no job. And I thought, my goodness, what on earth am I going to do? So I stayed with a great friend who was incredibly kind. And at night, I went to retrain as the secretary because things had moved on in the 8 years since I'd been at home with my children. And I went to train at night and I got a job as a secretary, but only during my children's school hours. So I used to go into work. I remember it so clearly because I would leave them on the doorstep of the school and then I'd rush into work and then I'd literally come back and collect them. And any work I had to do in the afternoons, I had to do at home. And I managed to get a 100% mortgage, which they don't do these days, and which was incredibly lucky. And I got it with the Bank of Scotland, and they didn't ask what your salary was. They just asked if you had a salary. And so I was able to borrow some terrifying amount. And having always been brought up to live within my means, this was really coming out of my comfort zone and very scary. And I bought this old brothel in Tooting and I renovated it in the evenings. I moved in with my two children and I renovated it in the evenings and I turned it around and sold it very, very quickly. I think it was within 3 months. And my children were so excited to have a home that they were like, no, please don't sell it, please don't sell it. But anyway, sold it and I banked some cash. And then I did the process again and again. And whilst I was doing that, people used to come round to my house and say, wherever I was living at the time, and say, please, will you do up our home? Please, will you help me? Please, will you do this? And so I kept working as a secretary from 9 till 3, but then in the afternoons, as well as renovating a house that I was working on, I would start to do extra work for other people and do interiors for other people. So that's how essentially I got into it. And then eventually settled into a home. I then went and studied many years later at the Inchbold School of Design, which was an absolute dream to do, and then set up Osborn Interiors, and I had a new baby at this point as well. So life was incredibly busy, but that's how I sort of stumbled into it, really.
That's such an amazing story. So, have you always been interested in design, or did it just kind of happen that that's what you ended up doing?
I think it just kind of happened. I mean, I never thought as a sort of teenager or in my early 20s, I never thought, gosh, I want to be an interior designer. I don't think I knew what an interior designer was. I think I always had an awareness of my surroundings. My stepmother, who brought me up, was incredibly stylish and our homes were amazing. And I think, therefore, it set me on a path of being very aware of my surroundings. And the other thing that became very clear to me was how your surroundings really affect how you feel. And so, even if I could only afford something really, really small, my ethos was always to have enough money to make it feel nice. I was not one of these people who thought, right, I'm going to stretch myself to buy this house and then I'll do it up as the years go by and when I get the money. Because to me, it's so important to be around surroundings that inspire you, and comfort you, create a calmness, a warmth, a security. I always felt that, if I could create that, even if I lived in one room, if that one room really made me feel nurtured, happy, relaxed, then that's what I wanted to achieve. So I was aware of the emotion behind design, even if I wasn't sort of, thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I want to be an interior designer or a decorator or whatever. It was more about understanding how it made you feel, which was actually the driving force for me, making enough money to support my children.
Yeah, completely. And what would you describe your style to be?
Well, it's funny because people tend to use one word when they describe anything that I create, which is calm. And it's funny because my life has been anything but calm. It has been absolutely chaotic, exhausting, stressful, mad. And so subliminally, I must want to create calm interiors and a calm environment to live in to counterbalance that madness that is my life, because it's not been very straightforward. I would say neutral. I would say calm. Someone once described it as organic luxury, which made me laugh. I think it's sort of, I love materials and natural materials. So I love natural elements. I love wool, wood, I'm obsessed with timber of all sorts, linen, marble, stone, all of that type of thing. I really love natural materials. And I'm not a sort of a bling person. To me, it's all about textures and that kind of aesthetic.
And do you find that you follow the interiors trends?
Not at all. And I know that the trend at the moment is loads of color and pattern and checks and ginghams, and all of this has come back in fashion, and it's stripes and whatever. And I personally walk into an environment like that and I feel absolutely exhausted. My head is spinning. I'm like, oh my God, it's too much. And I can see how you can create a coziness with those colours and loads of pattern and stuff. But I would also create a coziness, which is another word that everybody uses to describe interiors that we do. I would create the coziness by building up of layers of textures, so even if you have whites and off whites and taupes and all of those sort of cozy colours, by layering them and doing masses of them with different textures and whatever, you can also create a coziness which doesn't involve, lots of colour. But no, I don't follow interior trends at all. To me, it's about what resonates.
When you're designing a client's home or hotel, do you put your own stamp on it, as in what you would like, or are you given a brief that you need to work with?
It's such a fine balance, that. And it's so interesting because people come to you because they like your style, and then they say, oh, but I really want to have this as well, or that as well, or I've got to have, Granny's piano in the corner or something. So I think the real art of interior design is being able to navigate that really difficult path between what a client has come to you for, which is your style, and actually also what they inherently want. And it's a really, really fine line. And it's funny because so many people today would call themselves interior designers because they've just done up their own house, and therefore they say I'm an interior designer, but they've never had to work with a client, and they've never had to get things, on time, on budget, and attend to a brief. And it's a very different world from just doing up your own home. And I think that that is the tricky bit of a client coming to you for your aesthetic, and then inevitably they want to put their own stance on it. So you have to sort of steer them in a way that you feel satisfies them and also the reason they came to you in the first place. I'm very lucky because on hotel projects we've worked on, and we've worked on 5 big hotel projects. That's a completely different entity because they give you carte blanche. So I've had amazing clients on hotel work. I think that's why I find it a lot easier than residential work, because they literally will let you do what you want. So therefore, from that point of view, you can actually deliver your own design aesthetic, which is really fun.
If you are going to design a hotel, where on earth do you start?
Well, you always start with the spatial planning. So you start with huge AO plans, which are massive, and those are drawn up of the space. And the whole thing initially is set out to do with spatial planning. In conjunction with that, you would do a huge amount of mood boards and concepting, which you would agree with the client in terms of the actual style and direction that that hotel would want to go in. So that those two things you'd work in conjunction, because if you're designing hotels, invariably there are normally restaurants involved, bars involved, public places like receptions and all of that sort of thing. So the spatial planning is key to it, that the hotel flows properly. You would sit down and get a massive brief from the client. You'd have to know your clients, the customers, and what the demographic is of the hotel, what age of person, what percentage of them come from which countries, all of that type of environment, the look and feel they want to create. But planning a hotel, designing a hotel is incredibly good fun, I feel. It's the best thing I've ever done.
How does it differ from designing a home?
I think designing a home, you have a lot more psychology involved. Normally, you are straddled between a couple, and invariably they tend to want completely different things, and one of them's paying the bills on the whole. They have different opinions, so you have to be a psychiatrist as well and navigate between two people who have got completely different agendas. In a funny way, it's more time consuming to do residential design. You become more emotionally involved with the customers. In fact, we have not taken on residential design with a client that we didn't absolutely love from the outset, because you spend a lot of time with those clients and you need to have a really good working relationship. With hotel design or any kind of commercial design, it's much quicker, it's much more business-like. You're in a boardroom with often up to 30 people, decisions are made quickly, it's less emotional, it's more productive, it's quick. They're interested in budgets, but they tend to let you have your way in design. So they're very, very different. One, residential is more emotional, you become attached to the houses and the clients, so it's very different.
So you decided to start your interior design company. How did you expand it and what did you use to market it?
Well, it's interesting. I've never really wanted to expand it, and in fact, we turn down probably 70% of work we're offered because I don't want a big design company at all. I am rubbish at managing people. And also, I like to do all the design work myself. And I think that if you've got a huge team of people, you end up just managing them and not doing any of the work. So, in all honesty, we keep it really small and really tight. So, I haven't really expanded. I have great admiration for people who run big teams of people. I don't know how they do it. I would never want to do it. We have had 90% of work through word of mouth. Instagram has been, incredible. We get a lot of inquiries from Instagram. We've had a couple of really good projects from Instagram. So that's been a massive game changer. I mean, that the marketing, point of view from Instagram is extraordinary. It really has been a massive game changer in the interior industry. But it's also been a big game changer in that so many people just do up their own houses or whatever, and they put it on Instagram and they get masses of publicity, and then they become influencers and they start doing ads and selling products for other people and getting paid for it, and then they call themselves interior designers. And I think there is such a world apart from influencing and interior design. And a lot of people say to me, oh, well, you're an influencer. And I say, well, I'm not an influencer because I don't get paid to promote anything, and I wouldn't promote anything unless it was something I had genuinely bought for myself or genuinely paid to go and stay in a hotel or on a trip, or I don't know. So therefore I'm to consider myself not an influencer at all. I mean, maybe subliminally I am, because I influence people by stuff that I use, but it's not intentional. It's interesting because of things like Instagram, a lot of interior designers are asked all the time, where did you get that? Where did you get that? Where did you get that? And as an interior designer, you can't share your sources, because then you would have no clients, because the clients don't want the whole world to know where they got everything. So there's such a fine line between doing that. And in fact, I got into selling things, well, for two reasons. Number one, in COVID, we were working on 3 large hotel projects in Spain, and they shut down overnight. And I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And I've always, all my adult life, had to think of a plan B. So I just started, I'd made a candle, and which essentially I did because I was going to give it to clients, and it was just a fun thing to design this fragrance. And when lockdown happened, it was absolutely terrifying. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll sell this candle. So literally from my kitchen, I started selling this candle, and it literally sold out. And I thought, oh my gosh. And then in conjunction with everybody asking you, where do you buy this from? Where do you buy that from? I thought, well, maybe I should start selling things, because it's very, very hard to say, oh, yes, well, I buy my handles from here, here, here. I buy my sofas from there, there, there. Because then what happens is that your clients are upset because there's no discretion. Anyone can go and get it, so that it gives you no exclusivity. And so I started to make my own things and sell them, which actually worked incredibly well, so that I could give answers to people. However, that also has a great deal of stress attached to it, and it's not very cost effective, to be honest. It takes a huge amount of time, and so it's actually not that beneficial. But the reason I started that was to help in lockdown when projects stopped, and I was absolutely terrified.
With the development of, you say, Instagram, there's also Pinterest, TikTok, YouTube. Do you think there always will be a role for interior designers in this modern age?
I am fascinated to see how all of that goes. I mean, I know TikTok is aimed at very much a younger market, and yet I'm seeing that a lot of interior designers are now doing stuff on TikTok. I'm fascinated to see how that will be. I mean, I've seen in Instagram recently that the things that do unbelievably well are very, very short clips that are either make you laugh or give you a snippet of advice very quickly, or a hack. And actually, I've seen that, people's Instagram interior stories have sort of waned off a bit, and people haven't got the time to look at various things and read all about it. They're constantly scrolling. It's instant, instant, instant. And I don't know where that will go for the interior design world. I don't know much about TikTok. Pinterest has always been a place I've looked to for inspiration. I don't have my own Pinterest. Actually, I do, but I've never really sort of done anything on it. But I'm sure Pinterest will stay around for inspiration. But I'm not sure. I just think the world has got faster and faster and faster, and people just have less time, and it's all so quick and instant that I wonder where it will be in 5 years. I've never seen such a transformation in Instagram in the last 5 years, though. It's been absolutely extraordinary.
And you've got a significant following on Instagram. Was that quite an organic growth, or did you really focus on it?
I don't know. I think one, because my old cottage was adorable. I think that attracted a lot of people. It got a lot of publicity in America. Nancy Myers, who wrote and directed a film called The Holiday, approached me and said if she was going to do The Holiday too, could she do it in my cottage? Quite a lot of sort of celebrities in America were interested in that cottage just because they love anything that's quaint and English.
I saw your cottage and I was like, that looks like it's in The Holiday. That's so funny.
It was so funny because I bought that cottage on such a whim. I literally bought it in 5 minutes. I'm very impulsive. My youngest daughter, I've got a big gap of 16 years between my elder two daughters and my youngest. And my youngest daughter was at a school in London and she was being very badly bullied. And I wanted to get her out of the school and I wanted to get her into this little school in the country. And I thought, I had an office in Battersea and I thought, okay, well, this school was in the Cotswolds. And in my 20s, I bought 2 derelict cottages in the Cotswolds for £90,000, at auction. And I renovated them and I had to sell them because my then husband went bankrupt, and long story. But anyway, so I always had a dream about going back to the Cotswolds. I loved it. I love Cotswold Stone. To me, it's the nearest thing of France and England. Anyway, I went to look at this school and I thought, right, it was very long hours. She had to be at school from 8 till 8. So I thought, great, I can commute to London. I've got to go and just find a place to live with her during the week. And because we were living in Clapham, and so that I can just get her from school on my way back from commuting back from London, and somewhere to put our head down and sleep. And for 4 nights a week, I went to see all these rental properties and they were extortionate. And I thought, oh, I don't know what to do. Anyway, was just about to drive back to London, was starving hungry, went into this shop to go and buy a sandwich and, whatever to keep me going on the journey home. And there was this little cottage next to the shop and it had a for sale sign in this sort of undergrowth. You couldn't even see, it was so overgrown. Something drew me to this cottage and I went and I literally knocked on the door. I've never done that before in my life. And I said, I am so sorry to just turn up uninvited, but could I please have a look? And she went, yes, of course, come in. Within 3 paces, I had decided that I had to have this cottage. And I'd Googled how much it cost. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know where I'm going to find the money from, but I just had to have it. And I made them an offer and I said, could you be out in 3 weeks if I can buy it? Because my daughter starts school in 3 weeks. And they went, yes, it's okay. And it just sort of happened like that. And I think this journey with this cottage was a very emotional one for me. I was born in a little cottage in my mother's bedroom, and it just felt to me like coming home. And I also think that I hope I'm very honest and relatable in my Instagram and very human. I think people relate to that, and I think they feel they can talk to me or ask me anything or whatever. And I think that helps with growing an Instagram following, because I also spend an awful lot of time replying to people. I mean, I probably get well over 100 direct messages a day. I read every single message I'm sent, always. Because if people have taken the time to say something to me, and people open up to me, people tell me their whole life story and whatever. So I think that's a part of it too. So I'm sort of responsive, and I hope I'm open and honest, and also talk about how difficult life can be, because Instagram can make you feel really crap sometimes when, everybody looks at people's lives and thinks they're absolutely wonderful, because life is really tough most of the time.
It's so easy to just put out a certain persona online and no one really no one knows the rest of your life. And even if you put 4 updates a day, people will think that's your whole day, when actually it's probably a cumulative of about 5 minutes if you're just taking little photos. It's crazy
So
to
true. It's so true. And
yeah.
I think people want to be inspired. They don't want to feel jealous or made to feel inadequate themselves. They want to feel inspired. I'm very lucky because people have been very kind to me.
What would be your 3 non-negotiable things if you're designing a space?
Oh, wow. Definitely no short curtains. That is my complete pet hate. I cannot stand curtains that do not go down to the floor. That is not negotiable. Lighting to me is absolutely critical. It can make or break a space. I am not a fan of, masses of overhead lighting. I like lighting to be in pockets, and I like it to be layered. And so that I have some on the floor, some that's task lighting, some lighting on the ceiling, but it has to be really considered. And I like pockets of light in specific and strategic places, because lighting at night creates atmosphere. A space without adequate lighting, it is completely lost. So that is non-negotiable. I think also for me, it's about a flow. It's about spaces that lead into each other, that have a continuity. I'm sometimes you go into a property and there's no theme, or you have a red room and then it goes into a green room and then it goes into a purple room, whatever. That's fine, but there needs to be some continuity that carries this journey and this story. I think that's very important. Not that I'm not, negotiable on, but I also think nice finishes really elevate a project, nice light fittings, nice bath fittings. And that doesn't necessarily mean expensive. It just means that they're considered again, and as nice as you can possibly afford. I think that that's important. Comfort is non-negotiable. Spaces must be comfortable. I'm a person that loves form and how things look, but they also have to be functional, and they have to work, and they have to be comfortable. You've got to get home and sit down on the sofa and have somewhere to put your glass of water, glass of wine, cup of tea, whatever it is. I was taken last weekend to stay in the One Hotel, and it's one of my favorite brands in London, as a birthday present, and it was really luxurious and such a treat. But it was so interesting because they had a lovely wooden log as the bedside table, but it had such a slope on it that you couldn't put your drink down. And then the other bedside table was so low that every time you went to put something down, it was really uncomfortable. Yet the design was so beautiful. And I was thinking, you have to consider every element. So when you're sitting somewhere, you want to put your feet up on some. So therefore that's got to be practical, that you can do that, and all these sort of things. So I think comfort is something that's non-negotiable, definitely.
For those people who are on a budget, how can they really easily elevate their home without breaking the bank?
Gosh, well, one of the first things I ever did, I don't know how this even came about, was that I was asked by a Japanese TV company, this is 30 years ago, to do a program on my kitchen. And I don't know how, I think my house had been on the cover of a magazine, and everything from that kitchen I had got from a skip. And I did this program on how to decorate from a skip. And I literally had no money. Therefore, I really understood about decorating with no money. I would say it's about your eye and finding things. So many things in my own home have cost very little. I would say if you stick to a similar color palette, that really helps. I mean, I've got some treasured in my shepherd's hut actually, wicker lights that came from Homebase and cost £15 each. And I love them. They still work really well today. So it's not about money, it's about spotting objects. There are so many good shops these days to buy things on a budget. H&M Home, I think, is brilliant. Zara Home, brilliant. Darnelm, even, absolutely brilliant. And IKEA, my goodness, I buy lots from IKEA. The IKEA sisal rug is one of my absolute go-tos. You know, £80, absolutely fantastic. So I would say look at those objects, take them out of the environment mentally, take them out of the environment and imagine them in your own home. I think you can easily decorate on a budget. I love doing that. And it's been what I've done all my life. It's been a challenge. I've always painted floorboards myself. That's a really inexpensive way, and then put down an IKEA rug. Neutrals really help, because I think if you're buying things like neutral materials in ready-made curtains, they look much more expensive than if you're buying floral patterns in a curtain. So, you know, neutral look-alike linen, so polyester that looks like linen, perfect, that kind of thing. So I would say keep it neutral, because I think you can get away with it looking sort of more expensive if it's neutral rather than patterns. But it's not difficult to do with the shops that there are these days, where you can buy amazing things at reasonable prices.
That's so interesting, isn't it? How you can actually create such beautiful homes without spending a load and load of money. It's about spotting them in the right places. What is the most difficult thing about being an interior designer?
I think it's, first of all, that it's a huge amount of admin. People think it's a really creative job, and it is, but I would say that it's 60% admin. Really difficult things are things like it's sorting out the problems. So let's say you've done all the concepting, done the planning, it's gone to planners, building works happened. Project management is always really stressful on projects. But then you've got immensely long lead times on some of the items that you're procuring. So you keep them all they all go to a storage unit or somewhere that you keep for the client. And it's about checking that they're, all arrive safely. It's incredibly time consuming. That lamp arrived broken, you've got to send it back. Those sort of things. There's a huge amount of admin that goes on behind the scenes. Other difficult things are when you've agreed certain things with a client and then that item arrives and then they don't like it. And then it's awkwardness of whose responsibility that is and the financial implications of that. Project managing building works, I personally find particularly stressful. I don't know whether it's because I'm a woman and men think that they can get one over on you, but I find that really stressful to do. And I think it's also if you're not in complete alignment with your client. And I think that's why it's really important to get on well with them and like them and have build a good relationship, because if there's any issue right at the outset, the cracks will begin to show as the relationship, as the journey goes down the line, because invariably there will be stresses. And therefore, if you don't have that great relationship from the outset, when you hit issues and problems, which you absolutely will, then it's very difficult. So I would say it's really important to work with people that you get on very well with at the outset. But it's a huge amount of admin that goes on behind the scenes. The most difficult thing, clients changing their mind repeatedly and knowing when you have to draw the line under that and say that you're going to charge for more changes. That can be tricky. I think that's about it.
And what is your favourite project that you've ever worked on?
A hotel in St. Bart's in the French West Indies. It was for a client I had worked for before. We had done another hotel project with them in St. Bart's, which was called the Cheval Blanc, which was absolutely lovely. Ile-de-France Cheval Blanc, which was a beautiful hotel, private owners, and the owners are amazing. We had spent some time working with them on this other project. They had sold that to LVMH, and then they got this new hotel project, and they got us out in February, and they had literally purchased the hotel the day before. I had 3 days to measure up the entire hotel and come up with ideas. I presented all those ideas on day 3 to the client, who is the best client. And he just said, okay, great, love it, go, 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 go. And I came back to England and we had to do an entire hotel, which involved making all the joinery, from everything to all the cabinetry to all the mini kitchens in each bedroom, all the furniture, absolutely everything, all the soft furnishings, the lighting. We created things that were all over the world, which were extraordinary. And we had to have it shipped and delivered and installed within 5 months. And it honestly nearly killed me. I worked probably 17 hours a day for those 5 months, but we did it and we installed it and we got it open, and it was absolutely extraordinary. And I've continued to work on that hotel for the last 10 years since then, because they do updates every year, and it's an extraordinary place. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's something I am so proud to have been involved with. The clients are innovative, stylish, really lovely to be with, and so it's had its stresses and strains. Shipping something over to the Caribbean has, believe you me, it's absolute downfalls. And you're shipping huge containers, loads of them, and the paperwork involved in that is massive. At the time of year that you're shipping it, there's hurricane seasons, so you've got all of that. After we finished the hotel, it was then completely wiped out by Irma, so we had to do it all over again. But it's certainly been stressful at times, but I think I love what we created there, and the client is very generous with giving us a lot of freedom, and we work very closely and with them, and that's been an absolutely extraordinary project to do. I feel really lucky to have done that.
And if you could give a piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Ah, one thing: believe in yourself. I've always had imposter syndrome. I've always been insecure. I've never felt that I could achieve anything. I had brothers who, went on to Oxford University, and, my father said to me, oh, don't worry, you'll get married, you'll be fine, kind of thing. You don't need to sort of work. And I was unbelievably ill prepared for the life that I then had. And I think if I had had some element of self belief, my life would have been a little easier. So, uh, definitely self belief. And I also think the one thing I've really come to learn lately is that it's about your mindset. I believe that quote that Ford said about, if you believe you can, you can. If you believe you can't, you can't. It's up to you. If you're telling yourself you can, then you can, and vice versa. And I really now believe that it's all about your mind and your mindset. And so self belief, I think, is critical. And also finding your passion. I'm 100% convinced that you can make your passion work as a career. If you are that passionate about it, you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really good advice. And I think everyone listening to that, it will definitely resonate. So, what does the future hold for Osborn Interiors?
That's a very interesting question because I feel at a slightly pivotal moment in my own life. I want to take the shop back to basics and just have it sell things that we make exclusively that you cannot buy anywhere else, because there's too much stuff on the internet that you can buy anywhere. So I want to bring that exclusivity, I can never say that word, back to the shop side of things. I definitely want to do more developments for myself. I definitely have got at least one, if not two, more cottages in me, because I've got so many more ideas I want to do. And sometimes it's hard to do that for clients, and therefore I want to do another renovation or two. So watch this space.
Amazing. And if people want to follow you online or find your website, where do they go?
Our website is www.osborninteriors.com. No E or U in Osborn. Of course, that always causes huge problems. And our Instagram is Osborn Interiors. And please do and get in touch. And hopefully, if anyone, takes the time to contact us, I will make the time to respond to them, because I'm always so touched that people in their very busy lives do get in touch.
Incredible. I'll link all of those below in the show description, so do be sure to check that out as well. Bea, thank you so much for joining today. It's been a pleasure to chat through all things interiors with you, and what an amazing story that you have.
Thank you so much, Emily.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much for joining.